labels, nicknames, characterizations. You've had them. Perhaps people have said you are depressed, or you're angry, or you're a loner, or you're temperamental, or you're oversensitive. Maybe there was a nickname that they gave you when you were a kid. They maybe said you were fat as a slob, or skinny as a rail, or you fill in the blanks. Maybe people have actually said those things to you in your life. You know, it's interesting. If I go to the grocery store, especially now I go to the grocery store, the first thing I look at is the label. And I have to look at all the stuff that's in it, all the good stuff that I can't have. So then I put it back, and I find something that I can have, and I take it out and read the label and go, okay, I got to take this one. But the label usually tells me what's inside. And that label tells me everything. See, we believe that with stuff like that because that's important. But when we are given labels ourselves, we suddenly begin to believe that the label that somebody gave us is the label that we have to live with. That label is what we are going to have to live out the rest of our lives. Whether it was a label that was given to us by a family member, a label that was given to us by a brother or a sister or a grandparent, a label that was given to us by a friend, the nickname that they had maybe if we were bullied when you were in school, and you think about that label and it haunts you and it hurts you, and you realize that as much as you try to push it away and not live it out, that you wind up living with that label. And it's hard. Some labels aren't so bad. Some of them are. Throughout history. In fact, remember the murderer known as Jack the Ripper. You guys know who he is. Remember the guy from the Bible, John the Baptist. This morning we're going to talk about Rahab the Rahab the harlot. That's quite the label, isn't it? The story occurs in the Old Testament. And let me give you the setting first, and you're going to go, gee, why, if you're just visiting with us, you're thinking, why are we here? And what does this have to do with Christmas? You'll see in just a few moments. The children of Israel had been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Finally, all the others have died off. They are before the promised land, and they're about to enter. God finally tells them, this is what's going to happen, but before you do, I need you to do something, Joshua. I need you because you're going to be doing battle. Remember, in the Old Testament, they were building a nation. And so there was a lot of wars, and there was a lot of killings, and there was a lot of stuff because it was their land, and they were going to take it over. And whenever there's a war, it's bloody and it's brutal, and you read it and you go, wow, this is some tough stuff. But he says, I want you to go in strategically, and I want you to send 2 spies in to spy out the land. This was not the first time they had done this when they went into Canaan, and this is not the last time the Israelites will do something like this. They would send out spies. It was a regular occurrence. So the 2 spies are sent out. They're sent over the river. They're out. They go in to the city of Jericho. Now, what happens is when they go to the city of Jericho, something interesting happens. As soon as they get to the gates, word starts to spread. Now, they didn't have Facebook. They weren't trending on Twitter. Word got out. Because the Israelites were camped. And Jericho, the people of Jericho knew something was going to happen. And so the spies come in, and they go look for a place to stay. They look for a place to hide. And they go to some interesting place. They go to the house of a prostitute. Now, I just want you to think about this for a minute. The spies of God, the first place that they go is to the house of a prostitute. Why is this here? Well, there were a couple of things. Interestingly enough, in Old Testament times, the prostitutes were also what we might call a hotel manager. They were the first sort of temporary Airbnbs. They rented out rooms. Got the picture? And so they went there, and I'm sure that when they knocked on the door and Rahab answered, she's like, okay, guys, what's it going to be? Then they told her who they were. And everything began to shift. I want to show you what happens as we pick up and I actually want to go back in Joshua 2 to verse 2, where the king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. The king of Jericho then goes to Rahab, sends people to Rahab. So how did the king know where the prostitute's house was? Everybody knew where the prostitute's house was. Everybody knew. So he figures they're going to be hiding there, maybe because it's also an inn, and it was. Bring the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. But I love this. But she hears that they're coming. But the woman had taken the two men and hidden them. Indulge me for a moment. Rahab knew exactly what to do with these two guys. How many times had Rahab, over her time, heard, Rahab, open up. Rahab, open up. She opens the door. Yes. Is my husband here? No, I haven't seen him. You're welcome to come look. She knew where to hide him. So she hid the spies. And she says to them, yes, the men came to me, but I didn't know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. But notice what it says, verse 6. She had taken them up to the roof and hid them under the stalks of flags she had laid on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of Jordan, blah, blah, blah. Now, verse 8. Here's where we start. So I want you to get the picture. They're there to spy out the land. They're now in a prostitute's house, and the prostitute has hidden them in these flax that she had laid out on the roof. So I'm sure that the guards and everybody came in, and they looked all over the place, and the guys probably were like, and they breathed a sigh of relief. And so now she gets them out of the city, but before the spies lay down for the night, before all of that, she went up on the roof and said to them, and they probably thought, uh-oh, what does she want? I know that the Lord has given you this land. Say, what? No other conversation. I know the Lord has given you this land, and great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og and the kings of the Amorites and east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. When we heard of it, listen to this, our hearts melted. We were scared to death in fear. Everyone's courage, all of our courageous people, their courage failed because of you. For, listen to what she says, for the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Did you just catch that? Rahab nobody wants to say it. Hides them, and she says, listen, I got to tell you something. Your God, he's the one. Our entire city is scared. And I know that he's the one that has delivered you, and he's the God of heaven and the God of earth. And then she says, because of that, now I want you to swear something to me by the Lord that you will show, listen to this, kindness to my family. We joke about Rahab being a harlot. Why was she? What drove this woman? We don't know. That she would sell herself. Maybe that's all she knew, that's all she had, because the very first thing she was concerned about was her what? Her family. Give me a sure sign that you, listen at this, will spare the lives of my father, my mother, my brothers, my sisters, and all who belong to them, that you will save us from death. We don't want to perish. Your God is God, and I know that you guys, you are my only hope, and I want my family taken care of. And then they said this, our lives for your lives. If you don't tell what we're doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So look at what it says Rahab did. She lets them down by a rope through the window. For the house she lived in was part of the city wall. Now, what that means is there was a house sort of on the wall. And when you think about all the walls of Jericho came down, well, what happened to her house? It wasn't all the walls of Jericho. But you've got these walls that fell down. But her house was somehow maintained. Her house was there somehow on the walls. And then she said, listen to them. She gave them a plan. Go to the hills so the pursuers won't find you. Hide yourselves there for 3 days until they return, and then go on your way. And the men said this to her. This oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless when we enter the land you tied this scarlet cord. I bet that scarlet cord was used for more than these guys to get out of Rahab's house. In the window through which you let us down, and unless you've brought your father, mother, brothers, and all your family into your house, if any of them go outside your house into the street, their blood will be on their own heads, will not be responsible. As for those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we're doing, we will be released, and the oath you made us swear. Agreed, she replied. Let it be as you say. So she sent them away, and they departed. And she tied the scarlet cord in the window. When they left, they went into the hills and stayed there 3 days. Now, we're going to stop there for a minute because we're going to pick up the story again in just a few moments in another chapter. But let me tell you what happens next. So now Israel, they come back, they tell Joshua what's going on, and so they prepare for this battle that they're going to have. Now, what happens is Joshua gets these marching orders from God that are the strangest marching orders that anybody could have ever heard of, anybody would have ever seen, anybody would have ever thought about doing. They're nuts. God says, now, Joshua, here's what you're going to do. He says, I want you to take all the army, and this is going to take 7 days. He says, now, the first day, I want you to take the people, and I want you to take the entire army with the priests leading, and I want you to march around Jericho, and then I want you to go back home. Wait, what? And then he says, I want you to do it the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day. He said, now listen, on the seventh day, I want you to march around 7 times. And when I tell you, the priests are going to blow the horn, and when they blow the horn, you're going to cry as loud as you can, and the walls are going to fall down. Now, listen. If I was a military strategist, I'd be going, okay, wait a minute, hold on. This makes, they're going to shoot at us. They're going to have air. They're going to throw stuff at us from the walls. They're going to make fun of us. So could you imagine, though, for a minute, and give me a little bit of literary license, because her house is on the wall, and so all of a sudden she hears the march of the Israelites coming, and she's thinking, this is my moment. I am going to be delivered. My family is going to be safe. I've tied the scarlet cord up in there. Everything's going to be fine. And then what happens? She's watching, and they march, and they walk, and they walk, and they walk around, and they walk around, and then they walk away. Really? And then it happens a second day. And a third day. Now let me ask you, if you were Rahab, how long would it take you to think, they lied, this isn't for real, I should have never trusted these guys, I'm a dead woman because either they're going to kill me or the king's going to kill me, this is it. How long would it take you to think, this is over? It was day 4, and it was day 5, and there was day 6, and there was day 7. And all of the sudden, all literal hell broke loose. The walls came tumbling down. And it was interesting because if you jump over to Joshua chapter 6, I want you to see what happens there, because you are already in Joshua. So you should go to Joshua 6. After Joshua's told them, go in, take everything out, gave them clear instructions of what they needed to do. We pick it up in Joshua chapter 6, verse 22. Joshua said to the two men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong with her, in accordance with your oath to her. Now I want you to see something. God calls the two spies in. They all knew about the scarlet cord, but he called the two guys that went in, that made the promise, and they said, you are going to be the ones who are going to save her. And so notice what happens. A young man had done spy, went in and brought out Rahab, her father, and her mother, and her brothers, and her sisters, and all who belonged to her. Now, listen to this. Listen to this. They brought her out, her entire family, and put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. Now, I just want to camp there, if you will, for a moment. I don't know what the chaos looked like. It must have been nuts. They don't even know who all of her entire family is, so that's why strategically they wanted them in one place. You guys got to stay here. You got to stay in the house. They all have to be right here. We've got to see the cord, and if they're in your house, they are coming with us. And what relief she must have had when these walls fell down, and all of a sudden there was no knock at the door, but somebody plowed through the door and said, Rahab, you, your family, let's go. And they are probably, one was in front of her and her family, and other was behind her and her family, and they got her out, and they took her outside the camp of Israel. Why? Because she was a prostitute? Nope. Because she would be safe. Because that's what they promised. Because what if the people from Jericho came and attacked Israel? The first people they were going to go for would be Rahab, because she betrayed them. Taken outside the city to safety. Rahab, the harlot. Rahab, the prostitute. Rahab, the unworthy helper. That happens with our labels sometimes, doesn't it? Don't they make us feel unworthy? They make us feel like because we bear that label and because we're living with it, because somebody told us this is who we were going to become, that we are going to have to live like that. And we feel unworthy, and sometimes we feel unloved, and we feel like nobody's going to care, and this is my lot, this is my destiny, this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. This is how it's going to happen because of the label that I have in my life. John the Baptist. Jack the Ripper. Rahab the harlot. Let me say this to you, and this is the point that I want to get across. If you don't remember anything else today, you are not unworthy, helper, or anything else, because your stamp is not your story. The stamp that people have put on you does not have to be your story. I want to show you what I mean. Now you can go over to the New Testament, to Matthew chapter 1. I didn't put the page number because you just got to go to the New Testament on this one. If you can't find it, use your GPS. I'm just kidding. Okay. So we've been in this series and we've looked at these. We saw the people that are in the ancestry of Jesus, right? We saw Matthew, who wrote this, and we saw that he was a tax collector. And then last week we actually saw the guy who slept with his daughter-in-law, and they had a baby and all of that, and it was actually Judah, and it should have been Joseph, we thought, and we saw how that whole thing worked. But I want to read this again to you because Matthew tells us this is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac, the father of Jacob. Jacob, the father of Judah. Remember Judah last week? Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Now watch this. Perez, the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Amminadab. Amminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab the... It's not there. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Everything changed. Everything changed because she said to these spies, your God is God. And please, whatever you do, save me and my family. And so all of a sudden they come in, they take her out, they put her in a safe place, and somewhere along the line, Rahab became part of the family of God. Rahab even got married and have what we can see a functional relationship with a man that was not trying to use her, that ultimately it was God that wound up using her in a profound way, an ordinary woman of the street whose life was transformed. And the message was, and the message still is, your stamp is not your story. What are the stamps that people have given you? What are the labels? What have you been told about yourself all of your life? And you play the conversation over and over and over again. You may even hear it as a voice. You know what? Somebody was reading one time and somebody said, you need to identify the voice in your head. And we all have them, right? How many of you talk to yourself? Seriously. Come on, listen. I've seen some of you all at the traffic lights. You go, oh, I'm singing. Oh, I was talking on the Bluetooth. No, you weren't, now it doesn't look as odd because you think you're talking to the Bluetooth, But you know what Zig Ziglar used to say? It's okay to talk to yourself and it's okay to answer, but if you say, huh, then you have a problem. Right? We have those voices in our head, and there's a voice that if you can identify, it's the voice that runs over and over and over again that tells you you're never going to amount to anything. You're not any good. You're always going to be like this. It's always going to be this way because this is who you are. This is who you've always been. And there is a voice that is coming at you, and if you try to listen to who that voice is, it's probably someone from your past that has told you these things, and it plays over and over and over again. It's the voice that comes along when you get ready to say, I can have another relationship that's going to be functional. They go, are you kidding me? You can't. You've never been able to have a decent relationship. Why would anybody want you? It's the voice that says when you get out and say, you know what? I'm going to change careers. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change my financial life. And the voice says, are you kidding? This is who you've always been. I told you would have never amount to anything. I told you this is how this was going to be. You knew this, and that voice keeps you from taking the next step because it keeps you from believing. And it makes you believe that you're unworthy. Rahab could have heard the voices and could have said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. But at that moment, God had somehow gotten through to her. And she said to these spies, I know he's your God. I know he is the God. And I need to keep my family safe. And I need you to make a promise. And they came in to where she was at. And they took her and her family out. And they put her in a safe place. And she is in the genealogy of Jesus. Or as I like to say, there's a prostitute in the pipeline of Jesus. But he changed it all. But wait a minute. It doesn't stop there, because if her stamp was not her story, your stamp is not your story either. Here is the thing. This is what Christmas is all about. In the Gospel of John, it talks about how the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we've referred to this through the story that God came near, that He pitched His tent, that He lived in our neighborhood, that He came near. And it's one of these points that He came to us and He went like this. He said, I know you feel unworthy. I know that you don't feel right about yourself. I know that you don't believe in yourself. But listen, come with me. And He took us like this, and He put us out, and He said this, you are safe. You are loved. You are mine. You are part of my family. That is what Christmas is all about. And let me tell you something. If He did it for Rahab, He can do it for you. Your stamp does not have to be your story. Your stamp is not your story. Your label is not your life. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter about anything else. Today, this Christmas, this day, take the stamp and pull it off, because it's not who you are. Let's pray.